China and the US have moved to ease trade tensions today. Per Zero Hedge, US and China reach agreement to lower tariffs in a 90-day cool-off period. During a Monday morning press conference, President Trump told reporters the trade negotiations have led to a, quote, total reset in US-China relations. He added that he may speak with President Xi Jinping later this week. Here is some of that press conference now.
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs.
Per the Gateway pundit, this new deal with China comes after President Trump announced his first trade deal in a press conference with the United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, which retains the United States' 10% reciprocal tariff rate along with increased tariffs on automobile imports. Meanwhile, the White House says the UK is expected to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers on meat, poultry and dairy, which can exceed 125%. Just a bit of commentary on that UK trade deal. A lot of people were quite disappointed to see that initially there was a promise, or a demand rather, on the UK that they would repeal their hate speech laws in order to enter into some sort of a trade deal with the US. Unfortunately, that was not part of the deal. And in fact, a journalist asked President Trump at the time of his announcement, and he said no, they weren't going to include free speech provisions as part of this trade deal. So thought we should mention that because a lot of people were expecting that. We've seen tremendous persecution of people in the UK based on speech, and this is not a shared value with the United States. It's yet to be seen whether there will be future demands on that. But back to the China deal, the US has issued its first joint statement today. Both parties affirmed the importance of the critical bilateral economic and trade relationship between both countries and the global economy. For too long, unfair trade practices and America's massive trade deficit with China have fueled the offshoring of American jobs and the decline of our manufacturing sector. In reaching an agreement, the United States and China will each lower tariffs by 115% while retaining an additional 10% tariff. Other US measures will remain in place. Both sides will take these actions by May 14th of this year, and this trade deal is a win for the United States, demonstrating President Trump's unparalleled expertise in securing deals that benefit the American people. The Chinese actions: China will remove the retaliatory tariffs it announced since April 4th and will also suspend or remove the non-tariff countermeasures taken against the US since April 2nd. China will also suspend its initial 34% tariffs on the US it announced on April 4th for 90 days, but will retain a 10% tariff during the period of the pause. The American actions: the US will remove the additional tariffs it imposed on China on April 8th and 9th, but will retain all duties imposed on China prior to April 2nd, including Section 301 tariffs, Section 232 tariffs, tariffs imposed in response to the fentanyl national emergency invoked pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and most favored nation tariffs. The United States will suspend its 34% reciprocal tariff, which was imposed on April 2nd for 90 days, but retain a 10% tariff during the period of the pause. The 10% tariff is going to continue to set a fair baseline that encourages domestic production, strengthens our supply chains, and ensures that American trade policy supports American workers first instead of undercutting them. By imposing reciprocal tariffs, President Trump is ensuring our trade policy works for the American economy, addresses our national emergency brought on by our growing and persistent trade deficit, and levels the playing field for American workers and producers. Unlike previous admins, President Trump took a tough, uncompromising stance on China to protect American interests and stop unfair trade practices. From ABC News, stocks soar as US and China agree to slash tariffs. US stocks soared on Monday just hours after the US and China announced an agreement to slash tariffs for 90 days as the world's two largest economies negotiate a wider trade deal. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 1,050 points or 2.5%, while the S&P 500 jumped 3%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ increased 4%. Facebook, parent Meta, Amazon, and Starbucks each climbed more than 7%. Tesla, the electric car maker led by White House advisor Elon Musk, jumped more than 6%. I love how they throw that in. Led by White House advisor Elon Musk. They just had to put that in there. Best Buy, the electronics retailer that previously warned of tariff-induced price hikes, saw shares surge more than 5%. As well as this, the United States and China have agreed to take aggressive actions to stem the flow of fentanyl and other precursors from China to illicit drug producers in North America. While we're seeing these tariff announcements from their inception coming to fruition at totally different levels than initially put forward, it appears it's been a moving target from day one. This seems to be the strategy of Trump negotiations, essentially coming out and asking for the world seemingly ludicrous requests. And this strategy, albeit confusing to the people initially, does always seem to come back to some negotiated, fair, and reasonable level. It's his style, and at the end of the day, it seems to work. When he does things like this, it's a total shock to the system, literally shaking the whole machine. And then when everything settles, it seems to fall to levels that are beneficial for all parties involved. But Trump is obviously looking to benefit the US first. And as we always see when these announcements are originally made and the shakeup is announced, markets fluctuate, some go up, many go down. And then when it all comes to a head, everyone exhales a sigh of relief. During this time, of course, the mainstream media hyperventilates and tells you your ceiling is about to collapse on your head. Remember when President Trump said, "Don't look at the stock market"? It seems he knew exactly what he was doing. Let's not forget that President Donald Trump is one of the very few leaders of a country that is an actual successful businessman. And as per his first term, which we're sure he's learnt even more since then, he will implement systems and processes, at least from a financial perspective, that will be lucrative for the United States and beneficial for its trade partners. As to where this leaves local manufacturing, well, that remains to be seen. We'll keep you updated as this progresses.